Picture this. A fire tearing through the ruins of a forgotten outback town, black smoke rising into the desert sky, flames devouring what's left. But here's the eerie twist. Firefighters are banned, by law, from stepping in. The government itself forbids it. Why? Because even the very air is considered poisonous. This isn't fiction. This is Wittenoom, once a buzzing mining town in Western Australia, now one of the most contaminated places on Earth. A town erased from maps, silenced by dust, and remembered only through the lives it destroyed. Stick around, because the truth behind Australia's Chernobyl is stranger, darker, and deadlier than you've ever heard. And before we dig in, do us a favor. Hit subscribe, drop a like, and share this story. These hidden histories deserve to be told, and your support keeps them alive. The year was 1937. A prospector named Lang Hancock spotted something unusual from his small aircraft, glittering seams of blue running across the rocks in the Pilbara. That shimmering mineral was chrysidolite, or blue asbestos. To Hancock and the mining companies that followed, it wasn't danger, it was opportunity. By the late 1940s, a company town was built, Wittenoom. By the 1950s and 60s, it was thriving, the largest settlement in the region, boasting cafes, shops, a school, even a picture theatre. At its peak, nearly 1,000 residents lived there, building lives around what they thought was a miracle industry. Immigrants, especially Europeans, poured in, eager for steady work and a better life. But beneath the optimism, something insidious was unfolding. Blue asbestos was prized for being cheap, fire-resistant, and durable. Governments and builders saw it as the future of construction. What they didn't admit was that every fiber carried death, invisible, silent, unstoppable. Wittenoom wasn't just a mining town, it was a time bomb disguised as progress. To locals, Wittenoom felt like possibility. There was steady pay, company housing, and a sense of community. Children rode bikes through wide streets, families gathered at the local hall, and newcomers spoke of freedom under the open desert sky. But the blue miracle was everywhere. Miners brought dust home on their clothes. Wives shook asbestos fibers from overalls before washing them. Kids played in mounds of tailings as if they were sand dunes. One former resident recalled, "We'd dive into the piles, cover ourselves in the dust. We thought it was harmless fun." At its peak, Wittenoom was exporting over 160,000 tons of asbestos a year. Companies celebrated the boom. But behind the scenes, medical warnings were already surfacing. As early as the 1940s, doctors cautioned about lung disease. By 1948, British research had already linked asbestos to fatal conditions. But the warnings were ignored. Profit spoke louder. Daily life in Wittenoom meant breathing death without realizing it. Dust floated down like invisible snow. It settled on dinner plates, couches, baby cots. Mothers described sweeping floors 3 times a day, only for the fine powder to return. One haunting testimony comes from Lorraine Thomas, who lost both her husband and daughter to asbestos-related illness. Her words were chilling. It was in everything. In the food, in the sheets, in our lungs. We didn't know we were being poisoned. Children would sometimes chew lumps of asbestos, mistaking it for gum. Teachers recalled classrooms filled with fibers. Doctors visiting in the 1960s reported shocking numbers of respiratory illnesses, even among children, and yet the company kept the mines open. The invisible assassin carried on with every breath. By the early 1960s, the evidence was undeniable. Reports showed workers dying young, families coughing blood, and cancers spreading like wildfire. Mesothelioma, a rare cancer almost exclusively caused by asbestos, began appearing in alarming clusters. But instead of immediate closure, the mine staggered on until 1966, when economic decline gave the government a convenient excuse to shut it. For many Sioux, it was already far too late. Experts estimate that 25–30% of Wittenoom's former residents would eventually die from asbestos exposure. That's 1 in 3 people. Imagine a small town where nearly every street loses entire families over time. And yet, despite the mounting deaths, asbestos remained in Australian construction for decades. Wittenoom was just the epicenter of a national tragedy that would ripple across the country. After the mine closed, Wittenoom began its slow death. Government services were cut, schools shut, homes were demolished. By the 1980s, only a handful of stubborn residents remained. Then, in 2007, the government did something extraordinary. It officially de-gazetted the town. Wittenoom was erased from maps, stripped of its postcode, legally non-existent. It was as if they hoped erasing the name would erase the shame, but the land remained poisoned. The tailings, over 3 million tons, were left scattered across the valley, still glowing faintly blue in the sunlight. Scientists warned that the fibers could travel kilometers on the wind. The danger wasn't just local, it was airborne, and yet some refused to leave. Into the 2010s, a handful of residents clung to Wittenoom. Among them was Austrian migrant Mario Hartmann. When journalists visited him, they wore full hazmat suits, respirators, gloves. He welcomed them shirtless, barefoot, offering tea in his modest home. He laughed at the danger, saying, "I've lived here 30 years, mate. If it was that bad, I'd be dead." The image was surreal. On one side, experts in protective gear warning that even a single fiber could be fatal. On the other, a man gardening, feeding his chickens, and living life as if nothing was wrong. Mario became a living paradox, proof of resilience, or perhaps denial. He wasn't the only one. Until as late as 2022, a handful of residents remained, defying orders, saying they'd rather die in their homes than abandon them. The story of Wittenoom isn't just about miners. The land belongs to the Banjima people, who have lived there for tens of thousands of years. For them, the contamination is more than a health crisis. It's cultural devastation. Sacred sites, waterholes, and land central to their identity have been poisoned. In 2014, parts of the land were returned to the Banjima, but what they inherited was toxic. Elders described it as a wound that never heals. To this day, their community bears the double burden, the loss of culture and the constant threat of asbestos-related illness. Wittenoom has been called Australia's Chernobyl. The comparison isn't dramatic, it's accurate. Chernobyl was erased by radiation. Wittenoom by dust. Both invisible killers. Both leaving towns abandoned, scarred, and deadly for generations. Experts estimate over 2,000 deaths linked directly to Wittenoom, and the number climbs every year. Globally, asbestos still kills around 250,000 people annually. Wittenoom is not just a local story, it's part of a worldwide warning about greed, negligence, and the cost of ignoring science. Wittenoom is more than a ghost town. It's a cautionary tale, a place that began with hope, families, and laughter, only to become a graveyard carved into the desert. Its streets may be empty, its name erased from maps, but its legacy still breathes in the lungs of survivors, in the grief of families, and in the poisoned soil of the Pilbara. And perhaps the most haunting truth is this: the danger hasn't gone. The fibers remain, carried by the wind, embedded in the earth, etched into memory. Wittenoom is dead, but its shadow still lingers. If this story gripped you, if it shocked you, made you think, or left you speechless, then help us keep these forgotten truths alive. Hit that like button, share this with your mates, and subscribe. It takes just a second for you, but it makes all the difference in helping us bring more of these hidden histories to light. And drop a comment below. Would you ever set foot in Wittenoom today, knowing the dust itself could be the last thing you breathe? Because some mysteries aren't legends, some are scars, and Wittenoom is one of them.